My dear friends, thank you so much for inviting me back to America. Inviting me to California and giving me the opportunity to talk to you. Thank you to the Conservative Forum. Thank you all for having me here tonight. Thank you, Dutch and American police, to make this evening possible. It's great to be back in America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. It is great to be back in California, the state where dreams come true, and no challenge is ever too big to overcome. My friends, we are living in hard and difficult times. We are facing challenges we have never seen before. And I'm here to talk to you about Islam and the huge existential threat it constitutes for our society and our freedom. And I'm not talking about radical Islam. Don't let anyone fool you that such a crazy concept exists. There might be moderate people, but there is only one Islam, and that is the Islam of the Quran. But before I elaborate about Islam and the threat we face worldwide, let me first say what a pleasure it is to be here in Silicon Valley, the technological heartland of the world. It is not hard not to feel optimistic when driving through this vibrant valley of innovation. Here lies the epicenter of change. Here lives the future. Here we find the proof that for every problem, however hard and difficult, there is always a solution. As the great Californian and disabled sportsman Roger Crawford says, and I quote, "Being challenged in life is inevitable. Being defeated is optional." End of quote. And all that is needed is the will to solve the problem, the passion, the perseverance to overcome difficulties, and the confidence that free societies are always able to bring out the best in people. And this confidence is the cause of my optimism. Forces of darkness have attacked us in the past, but we have always prevailed, and we will do so again. Let me tell you something about myself. I am a politician from Europe. I'm not a cabinet member. I am a simple member of the House of Representatives in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And I oppose Islamization. I do it in a peaceful way. I do it through democratic means. I engage in political debate. But Islam has marked me for death. I am on the death lists of Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, and the Pakistani Taliban. And indeed, for the last 11 years, I have been living under around-the-clock police protection. Wherever I go, armed policemen go with me. I live in heavily guarded government safe house. I'm driven around in armored cars. My wife and I have even lived in prison cells, in army barracks, just to be safe from Islamic terrorists. And allow me as well, because it's not often that she accompanies me, to pay my respect in front of you to my wife. Without her support, it would not have been possible. Thank you, Christina. As I said, it's not about me. Everybody who warns about the dangers of Islam get death threats. My good friend, the Danish journalist Lars Hedegaard, was attacked, and so were the cartoonists Kurt Westergaard and Lars Vilks. Earlier this year, as you know, 10 journalists and cartoonists of the French magazine Charlie Hebdo were murdered, slaughtered. A few years ago, my compatriot, the filmmaker Theo van Gogh, was assassinated in broad daylight in the streets of Amsterdam by Islamic thugs. And the list goes on and on. As a matter of fact, we are all under threat today. But let's not make one mistake. Promise me never to be silent. Never to be silenced. We have to tell the truth about Islam, whatever the consequences. It's our duty to do so. And I know what I'm talking about. Not only did I study Islam, but I have traveled the Islamic world extensively when I was still able to do so more than 11 years ago. I have visited Turkey, Egypt, Tunisia, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Indonesia, and indeed I have met many kind, friendly and hospitable people there. And of course there are many moderate and kind Muslims. But this does not blind us and should not blind us for the very important reality that while Muslims might be moderates, Islam certainly is not. Islam is evil and nothing else. Allow me to give you a short briefing on Islam. The most important thing to know is the importance of the Quran. According to the Islam, the Quran is written by Allah himself. An angel dictated it literally to Muhammad, the Prophet. And it's important because every word in the Quran is Allah's word and therefore not open for discussion or interpretation. It is valid for every situation and at all times. And that, my dear friends, that is why there is no moderate Islam and never will be a moderate Islam. And if you get all the violent surahs, all the violent parts out of the Quran, you would have a leaflet, a book as thick as the latest Donald Duck. My friends, Islam is totalitarian. It wants to submit us all. And according to Islam, there is no room for anything but Islam. Islam is not voluntary either. No Muslim is allowed to renounce it. Apostates must be killed. It commands the submission of every nation on earth to Islamic Sharia law. And that's why I believe that Islam is not so much a religion. It should not be compared to other religions. It should be compared to other totalitarian ideologies. You were not allowed to leave communism either. People were not allowed to leave fascism either. People are not allowed to leave Islam either. So let's forget about the concept that Islam is a religion like Christianity or Judaism. It is not. It is a totalitarian ideology like communism and fascism, and we should treat it as such. At least your politicians should. We are all the victims of Islamization. Look around you. This building is surrounded by law enforcement officers, heavily armed. This gathering here tonight, everybody has seen it, is heavily protected. And you can ask yourself why. We are no criminals. We are peaceful, ordinary citizens. exercising a fundamental right in our free society, the right of free speech. And this is something that the American founding fathers fought for and enshrined in the First Amendment of your Constitution. So the situation here tonight, in fact, is absolutely un-American. But unfortunately, it has become a reality in America and the rest of the Western world. And why? Why is that happening? I will tell you why. Because Islam has entered America, and because Islam will take over America and Europe if we do not act today. Islam is fundamentally changing our society. Fanatics, brainwashed by a totalitarian ideology, are ready to kill us, simply because we try to inform people about the nature of Islam. They terrorize people into submission. And I am grateful that your brave organization did not give in to these threats. But the fact remains. Our own Judeo-Christian identity, our traditions, our freedoms, our values, including free speech, are no longer a given. They are in danger. They have to be protected. And that is a sad thing, unworthy of a free society. Only last month, we saw another tragic example of Islamization in America. A gunman in Chattanooga, Tennessee, murdered 4 American Marines and a Navy officer. The assassin, Mohammed Yusuf Abdulaziz, was an immigrant from Kuwait. And this makes one think about events in France in March 2012, where Mohamed Merah, an immigrant from Algerian descent, killed 3 French paratroopers. The same assassin that later attacked a Jewish school, murdering 3 children and a rabbi. Let me tell you about my own continent and my own country. During the past decades, the European governments have made a terrible mistake. Please, America, don't repeat this mistake. In Europe, we have foolishly allowed millions of immigrants from Islamic countries to settle within our borders. And now we are witnessing a new reality. Islamic neighborhoods are expanding. Many European cities have rapidly expanding Islamic populations. Just take Amsterdam, Brussels, Bradford, Marseille, Malmö, and so many other cities and towns in Europe. Europe is becoming a continent of headscarves and mosques. In the Netherlands, Mohammed is currently already the 2nd most popular name among newborn boys. Nationwide, and even the most popular name, Mohammed, the most popular name for newborn boys in our 3 largest cities, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague. This is also the case in the Belgian capital Brussels, the Norwegian capital Oslo, the British capital London. As a matter of fact, in the whole of Great Britain, Mohammed today has become the most popular name by newborn boys. Europe is a continent of extremism, becoming a continent of extremism and intolerance. And once again, please, America, don't make the mistake that thinking that what is happening in Europe today will not happen in America tomorrow. Because it will. It is already happening in America today. Last summer, to give you another example, in my hometown, The Hague, sympathizers of the Islamic State paraded openly in the streets. They carried openly swastikas. They carried the black flags of the Islamic State. They shouted death to the Jews in broad daylight in my hometown. And in Britain, Islamic gangs have been filmed patrolling London streets, demanding that passers-by conform to Sharia law. Recently, a young girl was beaten up in the French city of Reims by so-called Islamic religious police because she was sunbathing in a park in her bikini in a French town. And in every Western nation, there are today homegrown jihadis prepared to commit violence. The Islamic State call them city wolves. City wolves. There are thousands of them in Europe today. According to the European police agency Europol, 5,000 homegrown jihadis have left Europe to fight in Syria and Iraq, and many of them return and make the streets of Europe unsafe today. Last January, an ISIS operative said that this organization has already sent 4,000 fighters to Europe. And the British authorities recently have uncovered an ISIS plot to kill Queen Elizabeth. ISIS has announced that by 2020 it aims to conquer large parts of Europe, including Spain, the entire Balkan, as well as the northern half of Africa and the Indian Peninsula. And our political leaders, your own President Barack Obama, Britain's Prime Minister David Cameron, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, my own Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, they all still say today that Islam is a religion of peace. And let me tell you, are they wrong or are they right? They are totally wrong. John Quincy Adams, America's 6th president, said, and I quote, "The precept of the Quran is perpetual war against all who deny that Muhammad is the prophet of God." And Winston Churchill, the great British wartime prime minister, called Islam a retrograde force and called Adolf Hitler's anti-Semitic book Mein Kampf the new Quran. Adams was right. Churchill was right. Obama and Cameron were wrong. My friends, we live in an age where people like the idea of rights, so long as they do not have to pay the price for it. The political and media elites are all in favor of speaking the truth, so long as the truth is a cliché. But when duty and honor commands them to stand throughout history and tell stop to Islam, they flee away and lose their patience with those who do their duty. They call us extremists. They drag us to court. They try to silence us, but they will never succeed. They will only make us stronger and more determined. So let us stop appeasing and stop electing appeasers. Stop electing appeasers. The jihadis and their sympathizers, they do not belong in our societies. So I say, let us reclaim our freedom. Fortunately, I'm not alone. All over the Western world, and this is the good news, more and more people are saying enough is enough. And we are not marginal figures. I myself am an elected politician, leader of the Party for Freedom, currently in the most recent Dutch national TV poll, the largest party in the Netherlands today. And the jihadis wants to silence us because a growing number of people are realizing that we are telling the truth. My friends, we must never give in. We should not allow the terrorists to win and evil. Once again, Islam is evil to triumph. Where are the Western government leaders with the wisdom of Adams and Churchill? On the eve of the Battle of Long Island, I understand the first major battle of the American War of Independence, George Washington told his men, and I quote, "The time is now at hand which must determine whether Americans are to be free men or slaves. Our cruel and unrelenting enemy leaves us only the choice of brave resistance or the most abject submission." End of quote. These words by George Washington, these wise words apply to all of us as well today. Where are the Western government leaders with the courage of George Washington? Once again, we have it in our own hands. Vote different, vote stronger, vote better leaders into office. A few years ago, I called on Muslims to liberate themselves from the yoke of Islam and choose for freedom. I wholeheartedly support Muslims who love freedom. So I told them, free yourselves, leave Islam. And I still stand by this appeal. But this does not blind me to the equally important reality that while many Muslims are moderates, a very large number, unfortunately, and it has to be said as well, are not moderate at all. And let me give you some shocking numbers. Some shocking numbers from Europe. The University of Amsterdam did a recent study about the 1 million Muslims in my own country, the Netherlands. It found that 11% of the Muslims in Holland is prepared to use violence for the sake of Islam. And that is a staggering 110,000 people in a small country that is only half the size of Maine. And it gets even worse. While the terrorists indeed are only a minority, polls show that they have the support of the majority. And you don't read about that in the national press. They try to fool you by saying that it's only a small minority and the others, the majority, is against the Islamic terrorism. Well, it's not true. Let me give you some numbers. 73%. 73% of the Islamic population in the Netherlands say that Muslims who go to Syria to fight the jihad are heroes. 73%. And 80% of the Turkish youth in the Netherlands believe that it's not bad to have violence against non-believers. It's not a wrong thing. 80%. So we're talking about 73% of the Muslims in Holland who believe that jihadists are heroes, and 80% of the Turkish youth, one of the biggest minority groups in the Netherlands, believe that violence against non-Muslims is not a bad thing. And last June, some numbers about America. Last June, a survey among US Muslims revealed that a majority of 51% of the US Muslims want to be able to live under Sharia law in America. And even more disturbing is the fact that 29% of the American Muslims are okay with violence against people who so-called insult the Prophet Muhammad. And 25%, a staggering 1 in 4, agree that violence against Americans here in the United States is justified as a part of jihad. Indeed, my friends, you have a serious problem. We have a serious problem. We all in the West face a serious problem. And the problem, let's forget about political being correct, the problem is called Islam. I cannot make it more clear. Islam is the name of the problem. And the problem is growing. And we cannot afford to ignore it any longer, because our existence is at stake. It's not an economical problem where you have good times and bad times, and where you can reverse a bad economical situation if you lower the taxes and do some other things. This is an existential problem. If we don't deal with it, we lose our freedom, and our countries do not exist anymore as we know them. So we have to take it very, very seriously. Here in the United States, you have a problem with illegal immigration from Mexico. But just imagine if Mexico were an Islamic country today, where millions of Islamic immigrants are crossing illegally your borders. That, in your imagination, is exactly what is happening in Europe right now. There are already millions of Islamic immigrants in Europe. Last year, only almost 700,000 people, mostly from Islamic countries, made their way through Europe. And this year, the numbers are expected to be even higher. Every day, you've probably seen it on TV, they try to cross the Mediterranean with boats. In Calais, they storm trucks and trains in an effort to enter Britain. All over Europe, we are facing a major catastrophe. Every day, the situation gets worse, while our governing elites put their heads in the sand. It is time, my friends, to wake up, because time is running out. And indeed, as was said in the introduction, this is my first speech in America since the events in Garland, Texas last May, where two jihadis try to cause a bloodbath during a Mohammed cartoon contest in Garland. And I gave the keynote speech, and I was and I still am very proud and support the organizers of the contest, my good and brave American friends Pamela Geller and Robert Spencer. The winner of this Garland cartoon contest was, as you might know, Bosch Forsten. And Bosch Forsten is a former Muslim, an apostate. And Bosch had made a picture of a fierce-looking Muhammad waving a sword. "You cannot draw me," Muhammad said. And underneath the picture, Bosch had written, "That is exactly why I am drawing you." And that says it all. Indeed. Bosch stood for his rights as an American citizen. Under Islamic Sharia law, depicting Muhammad is a crime with a death penalty. But as an American, Bosch Forsten is not living in an Islamic country. This is America, the land of the free. This is the United States. Here, everyone is allowed to make pictures and drawings, no matter what the Sharia says. And everyone is allowed to change their religion, as Bosch Forsten did, and become an Islamic apostate. My message here today, once again, is that we have to make choices. Be brave and make a choice. Resistance or submission. Freedom or slavery. Liberty or Islam. Of course, everybody will say, we choose resistance, freedom, and liberty. And indeed, there is no other option. There is no other way. That is why we have to support initiatives like Garland. We should never allow ourselves to be intimidated by Islamic thugs. Never, ever. Not in Europe and not in America. And the good news is that more and more people are on our side. Just last week, a poll in Britain revealed how people think about Islam in general in the United Kingdom today. And over half of the population, or 56%, say that Islam, and I repeat, the question was Islam, not Islamic fundamentalism, but Islam. 56% of the UK citizens answered that they see Islam as a threat to Western society. And the political elites know it. They know that the mood of the people, that the vox populi is changing rapidly. And that is why they are panicking today. And that is why they try to stop us. They cannot stop the people anymore for voting for us. So they try to stop us through the courts. Unlike America, unfortunately, we do not have a First Amendment in Europe. And in the past decades, so-called hate speech laws have been introduced. And they are totally subjective. It is sufficient that someone feels insulted to get you to court, to bring you to court. And you might understand that those millions of Islamic activists feel very easily insulted. 7 years ago, indeed, I made a documentary about Islam and the Islamization of my country. Even then, they panicked. Jordan reacted, the Kingdom of Jordan, with the threat to issue an international arrest warrant against me. Indonesia, still valid today, declared me persona non grata for the rest of my life. Even the Secretary General of the United Nations denounced me. And in my own country, the Netherlands, I was taken to court, fortunately acquitted, but now the Dutch authorities have charged me again. And the only reason is that I voice an opinion that they do not like, that they find intolerant. Instead of acting against those who are intolerant to us, they go after those politicians who are fed up being tolerant to the people who are intolerant to us. Let's start becoming intolerant to the people who are intolerant to us. Last March, I spoke in Vienna, Austria, where I spoke again, as today, about the threat of the Islamization in Europe and how we should deal with it. And once again, an Islamic organization said they felt insulted, and it cannot get more crazier. Now the public prosecutor in Austria has even begun a criminal investigation against me. It's called legal jihad. If you cannot win on a democratic way, try it in a legal way. But let me tell you one thing. I will never give up. Always speak the truth about Islam, because too much is at stake. It is sad, though. What we are witnessing today is how freedom dies. It dies because politicians are unwilling to defend it. It dies because of cowardice, because of ignorance, because of political opportunism and false political correctness. And that is not the way it should be done. We owe it to the past generations always to speak the truth. People died for that, and not to take our liberties for granted. We owe it to the future generations not to sign away their freedom. And we can hold, my friends, we can hold the global expansion of Islam if we do our duty. We can't turn the tide, but we have to act today. Today, my dear friends, must be our finest hour. We must confront cowardice with the truth. We must confront ignorance with the truth. We must confront political correctness and political opportunism with the truth. The truth about Islam. I am from Europe. You are Americans. But we are all in the same boat. So I believe we must unite against this common threat. The Islamic tide is strong, but the West has repulsed it before. And we can do so again if we wake up and if we stand together. We should stand with every nation and every people threatened by Islamic Jihad. But especially, if you allow me, we should stand with a country that I love so much, namely the State of Israel. Let's be honest. Israel is a beacon of light in a sea of Islamic darkness. I have lived in Israel for a few years. It felt like home. It is our home. It is the only democracy in the Middle East. And it's the only country in the region that shares our values. Let's never forget it. And its conflict with Islam, it's not about land. You will not solve it by changing land. It's about ideology. It's a conflict about ideology. It's a conflict between freedom and tyranny. Israel is the canary in the coal mine. If Islam conquers Israel, we will be next. And Huntington was wrong. There is no clash of civilizations. There is a clash between our civilization and barbarism. That is the reality. And that is why we are all Israel. And that is why we should all support and defend the safety of Israel. And we should never trust Islamic criminal regimes such as the Islamic State of Iran. The nuclear treaty, which your president and the other Western leaders recently concluded with the Islamic State of Iran, is a travesty and an appalling historical mistake. It is a major threat to the security of Israel and the entire West. It is time to end these appeasement policies. It is time to support Israel. But once again, the change can only be achieved if you choose better leaders. My friends, it is not easy to criticize Islam. The jihadis will put you on a death list. The authorities will drag you to court. The political establishment will refuse to listen to your warnings. And they all will try to silence us. But the people are on our side, because we are on their side. And that is the side of liberty. And if I were to become the next Dutch Prime Minister, here is a few things that I would do. First, my first day in office, a Dutch, or even better, a European First Amendment, a guarantee for free speech. Protection for speaking the truth, no matter how politically incorrect it might be. And the second thing I would do, which is not politically correct either, is that I would, from the same day, end all immigration from Islamic countries. Enough is enough. We need less instead of more Islam. And why? Why are we so crazy to allow them to build mosques in our countries, while the first church still has to be built in Saudi Arabia and other countries? So I would say no more mosques in our societies, whether you like it or not. No more mosques, no more Islamic schools. Enough is enough. And the third thing I would do is, of course, as we have today, I would guarantee equal rights to anyone whatever background one has, who assimilates in our societies, who respects our laws, our constitution, and our values. But if you cross the red line, if you try to act according to Sharia law, if you think about acting and are acting about jihad, wherever you're from, whatever your name is, I will take your Dutch passport and expel you over the border. And the fourth thing I would do is regain national sovereignty and reinstate national border controls. You might not know it, but in Europe we are so stupid that the Netherlands, my own country, became a member of the European Union, became a member of the Schengen Treaty, and we don't only have to pay billions of taxpayers' money to Greece, as you might know, but also we are no longer a sovereign country. We have no national border controls anymore. And all those hundreds of thousands, all those millions of people who are coming from Africa today to Europe, we cannot send them back. So what I would do is make an example from Switzerland. I would like the Dutch to be as the Swiss, be in the heart of the European continent, but not a member of the European Union. The biggest disease Europe faces today is that we don't know what we are anymore. And if you are unable to know what you are, you don't know what you are not either. And I believe that it's not racist. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of. If we would say that our own culture, that is based on Christianity, that is based on Judaism, is a far better culture than the Islamic culture. Don't you agree? Stop the cultural relativism, the biggest disease of Europe today. Let's be proud on who we are. We are not Islamic, we are Christians, we are Jews, we are humanistic background, but we are certainly not Islamic, and let's say so to everybody who wants to hear it. My friends, a choice has to be made. I hope you understand that this is my main message tonight. And the choice, I cannot repeat it enough, at the end of the day is a simple one. Will you choose Islam or will you choose freedom? And please make the right choice. Let us continue the legacy our ancestors bestowed on us, with liberty and justice for all. Let us never surrender. Let us choose freedom. And let me finish my speech by quoting one of your great presidents, Thomas Jefferson. I also quote him in my book, Marked for Death. His words, still today, every day, are a great inspiration to me. Thomas Jefferson, President Jefferson, said, "In matters of principle, stand like a rock." And that, my friends, is exactly what we should do and what I will do, and I hope you all will do. We will stand like a stone wall in the defense of our freedom. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.